Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in video description. Thank you. Did you know? Some people love being the center of attention, being in the middle, with all eyes on them. And in the age of social media, this tendency has only increased. What's your story? How do you present yourself to the world? It is ironic that even though I put my face on YouTube, typically I don't really like being the center of attention. And yet even I have a tendency to think of myself in the middle. Growing up in North Wales, Prestatyn was where I lived. It was somehow in the middle of the world, and Chester was the nearest biggest city. Mrs. Soup gently mocks me to this day, because as a child I simply couldn't imagine a bigger place than Chester. But it seems I'm not alone. Throughout history, people have always tended to put themselves at the centre of their universe. 3,000 years ago, during the Western Zhou dynasty of China, people began to refer to their homeland with a new name. Comprised of 2 characters, this new name was Zhongguo, meaning quite literally central state, or as some have translated into English, Middle Kingdom. This was partly to distinguish themselves from others who they saw as barbarians, but also it firmly planted themselves in the middle of their world. And to this day it is still the short form name of China. The people of ancient and classical Greece relied upon the sea for trade and communication between their city-states and beyond. And so, for the Greeks, this was simply known as the sea. Also the Great Sea, our sea, and the sea around us. This familiarity implies a centrality, which would come to be formalized by the Romans. The Romans called the waters around them the Great Sea, the internal sea, and, with the rise of the empire, our sea. And supposedly, by the 3rd century AD, the Mediterranean Sea. The word Mediterranean, and indeed Mediterranean, has its root in 2 Latin words. These mean middle and land, respectively. For the Romans, and indeed the known world, this was the middle of the world, a firm marker, placing Rome more or less at the centre of the centre. So, geographically, the classical world placed itself centrally. But they were also central in a spiritual sense. Tales such as Orpheus descending into the underworld vividly paints a picture, a paradigm, if you will, where the gods, the dead, and the living occupy very different places, with the living firmly in the middle. The Mayans of Mesoamerica had a similar worldview, for them represented by a tree, a sort of cosmic structure, with the gods and the heavenly above, the dead and the underworld below, and humanity at the base of the tree, the realm of the living, also known as the middle world. The Mayans, indeed all of humanity, was in the middle. Across the Atlantic Sea, half a world away, the Vikings probably would have agreed with the Mayans. They conceived of the world as being part of the world tree, Yggdrasil, with Valhalla, the realm of the gods, and the Aesir at the top, and near the bottom, Helheim, the realm of the goddess Hel, and the dead. There were 9 worlds in all, but humans were in the middle, in a world surrounded by a great snake, and which the gods would visit via a rainbow bridge. This world where humans lived was Midgard, Middle Earth. Yes, the very same name that Tolkien would later use in his Lord of the Rings books. By the Middle Ages in Europe, a middle world on which people lived out their lives was firmly established in Christianity. Heaven was above, hell was below, and your life was in the balance. Some geographers attempted to reflect this spiritual reckoning of reality in a geographical model of the world which placed Jerusalem at the heart. This place was important for Christianity, and so it must be in the middle. Indeed, a similar logic led to a prevailing understanding of our place in the universe as being central. In this model, God created the universe, and Earth, and humanity in particular, were the crown jewel of that creation. Naturally, Earth would be at the heart of this creation. This was a geocentric model of the universe, placing Earth, and crucially us, in the middle. So it seems that throughout time and across the world, when thinking about the world, me is in the middle. But, speaking strictly for me, of course, I can say that the world is so much more than I thought it was as a child, with me in the middle. Today I live in a wonderful city in the northeast of England, seemingly beyond the reckoning of anything I knew back then. Interesting and unexpected things happen when me is no longer in the middle. Galileo Galilei is a famous key figure in the history of reckoning our solar system from a heliocentric perspective. In other words, the sun goes in the middle and everything else is circling around it. This observation moved us from the middle, but opened up so many possibilities, an understanding of interstellar mechanics, gravity, travelling to the moon, and observational science that indicates not only are we not at the centre, we're nowhere near it. Not only are there millions of stars, but there are billions of galaxies out there. Truly amazing. So it may be part of the human condition to think of ourselves in the middle. After all, we observe the world from our own bodies. We are, in that sense, in the middle at all times. But it is interesting to think about how our perspective informs how we view the people around us, and indeed the world that we're in. To put it another way, there are many me's and lots of middles. That said, I'm still incredibly happy that Scotland thrashed England in the Six Nations this weekend. Seriously, Mrs. Soup and I were giggling with glee. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with you.